thought it was done. Just when we thought enough records were broken for the day. Not only does USA get record-breaking viewership and ratings, CBS, come on down. We're going to break some records for you and raise your viewership ratings as well as only the GOAT, Caitlin Clark, can do. CBS receiving their highest rated WNBA game throughout the entire...
The announcement should have been simple. The WNBA revealed the participants for the three-point contest. Fans looked over the list, and the event moved forward. But one name was missing, and that absence immediately changed the conversation. Caitlin Clark was not on the list. The transcript states that Clark had been invited to participate and declined. That decision alone created a much bigger question than whether one player would appear in one contest. Why would the league's biggest attention magnet choose not to participate in an event built around showcasing elite shooters? And what would her absence mean once fans realized she would not be standing behind that three-point line? The answer is not established by the supplied material. Some commentators interpret the decision as a silent protest. Others simply see it as Clark declining an invitation. That distinction matters, because the entire controversy depends on what the decision actually meant. But the reaction was immediate. The contest announcement became a debate over Clark's influence, the event's participant list, and the league's relationship with its most visible star. The transcript also connects the controversy to the omission of Sophie Cunningham, whose absence from the contest generated its own criticism. That is where this stopped being a routine event announcement. Clark's decision created an information gap, and the gap became the story. Was this just a player choosing not to compete? Was it a message to the league? Or did the controversy reveal something bigger about how much attention follows the player rather than the event itself? Because once the name Caitlin Clark disappeared from that contest graphic, the question was no longer simply who would compete. The question became what happens when the player many viewers expect to see decides not to show up. But Caitlin Clark's absence was only one part of the controversy. The participant list itself created another question: who exactly was being chosen, and who was being left out? The transcript specifically focuses on Sophie Cunningham. She is presented as a fan favorite and a notable three-point shooter, yet her name was not included among the announced participants. That omission became a separate source of frustration because it made the controversy about more than Clark refusing an invitation. Now the selection process itself was being questioned. The listed competitors included Ryan Howard, Marina Mabrey, Aya Wilson, Bridget Carlton, Natisha Heedman, and Janelle Salon. The reaction in the transcript was immediate and dismissive, with commentary questioning whether the lineup contained enough recognizable star power to generate the same level of attention associated with Clark. But this is where the debate becomes more complicated. The source material does not establish that the contest was officially designed around Clark, nor does it prove that Cunningham was guaranteed an invitation based on a specific selection rule. What it does show is that fans and commentators perceived a mismatch between the players they expected to see and the players who were actually announced. And that perception matters because sports events are not judged only by the official list. They are judged by the reaction to the list. Clark's absence created the first question. Cunningham's absence created the second. If the league was trying to build a compelling three-point contest, why were these particular names missing? Was the issue a lack of star power? Was it a question of shooting credentials? Or was the selection process simply based on criteria the audience did not understand? That uncertainty gave the controversy room to grow. What began as Caitlin Clark declined now became, why was this the lineup in the first place? And once viewers started comparing the announced field with the players they believed should have been there, the conversation moved away from one player's decision and toward a much broader question of merit, selection, and whether the league had correctly identified what its audience actually wanted to watch. That is where the controversy moved from the participant list to the numbers. The transcript repeatedly points to Caitlin Clark's reported audience impact as the reason her absence carries unusual weight. It references record-breaking viewership and a figure of more than 3 million viewers connected to a WNBA broadcast, while commentators argue that many of the season's most watched games involved Clark. The important distinction is that these numbers are presented in the supplied material as evidence of her drawing power. They do not, by themselves, prove exactly how many viewers would have watched the three-point contest if she had participated. That specific comparison is not established here. But the question is still powerful. How much attention belongs to the event itself, and how much follows the star? That is the tension behind Clark's decision. A league can organize a contest, announce a lineup, promote the event, and build an entire broadcast around the competition. But if the audience is especially attached to one particular player, her absence changes the conversation before the event even begins. And that is why the decision feels bigger than a simple yes or no. Clark does not need to participate in every league event for her influence to remain part of the discussion. In fact, the moment she declines, the attention can shift toward the decision itself. The contest becomes a story about the player who will not be there. The transcript's argument is essentially this: Clark's value is not only measured by what happens when she plays. It is also measured by how much people talk about what happens when she does not. That creates the central power debate. Does the league create the event, and the player benefits from the platform? Or does the player bring so much attention that the platform becomes more valuable when she participates? The answer is not proven by the supplied transcript alone. But the controversy has made the question impossible to ignore. Because the three-point contest now has to stand on its own. And that is where the next question becomes even more important. Was Clark's absence simply a personal choice, or did fans interpret it as a message? But the biggest question still had no definitive answer. Why did Caitlin Clark decline? The supplied transcript presents multiple interpretations, but it does not provide a verified statement from Clark explaining her specific reason. That distinction is important because the meaning of the decision changes depending on the motive behind it. Some commentators interpret the decision as a silent protest. In that version of the story, Clark is deliberately refusing to participate in an event while broader questions are being raised about league decisions, player treatment, and the selection process. Her absence becomes a message without a public statement. But that remains an interpretation. Another possibility is much simpler. Clark was invited, and she chose not to participate. Declining an event does not automatically prove a protest, a dispute with league officials, or a deliberate institutional statement. Without a direct explanation from Clark in the supplied material, viewers cannot know with certainty what motivated the decision. That uncertainty is exactly what keeps the debate alive. One side sees the timing and the surrounding controversy and believes the decision carries a message. The other side argues that fans and commentators may be assigning a larger meaning to a personal choice. And both interpretations lead to completely different stories. If this was a protest, then the decision represents a player using her visibility and participation as leverage. If it was simply a personal decision, then the controversy may say more about the expectations placed on Clark than about Clark's intentions. That is the unresolved question at the center of the entire story. The transcript can establish that Clark declined the invitation. It can establish that commentators and fans interpreted the decision in very different ways. But it cannot, by itself, establish the private reason behind her choice. And until that reason is clearly stated, every confident explanation remains an interpretation. Which means the debate is no longer only about whether Clark will compete. It is about whether her absence was meant to say something at all. By this point, the story was no longer centered only on the contest. It had shifted to the reaction surrounding it. The supplied transcript describes a wave of discussion across social media and sports commentary following the announcement. Instead of focusing solely on who would compete, many conversations turned toward who was missing, why those absences mattered, and what they might say about the league's decision-making. Whether people agreed or disagreed with Clark's choice, the announcement generated far more debate than a typical participant list. The transcript also presents widespread frustration from commentators who believe the contest had lost some of its appeal without Clark. Others argue that Sophie Cunningham's omission added to the perception that the lineup did not match what many fans expected. These reactions are presented as opinions within the source material rather than independently verified measures of overall public sentiment. What made the situation different was how quickly attention shifted away from the event itself and toward the conversation surrounding it. Every headline, reaction video, and social media post kept the debate alive. Some fans defended Clark's decision as completely reasonable. Others questioned whether declining such a high-profile event was the right move. Still others focused almost entirely on the selection process, arguing that the controversy had exposed a disconnect between what league officials promoted and what many viewers wanted to see. That reaction became its own form of influence. In today's sports landscape, public attention does not end with an official announcement. Sometimes the response becomes an even bigger story than the announcement itself. The transcript repeatedly suggests that every new reaction, debate, and media discussion added another layer to the controversy, keeping it in the spotlight long after the participant list had been released. The biggest unanswered question, however, was still ahead. Would this remain an online debate driven by headlines and opinions, or would it ultimately affect how audiences responded when the three-point contest actually took place? But the controversy did not stay confined to the three-point contest. The supplied transcript expands the argument into a much larger conflict surrounding Caitlin Clark's influence and the level of attention now directed toward the WNBA. In the source material, commentators argue that Clark has increasingly become the subject of criticism for issues far beyond her own actions, with some claiming that she is repeatedly expected to respond to broader controversies simply because she is the league's most visible star. That creates a difficult question. When one player becomes the center of so much attention, where does legitimate criticism end and misplaced responsibility begin? The transcript presents one side arguing that Clark cannot be held responsible for every problem surrounding the league, its players, or its fan base. Another layer of the debate concerns the way different groups interpret the audience that followed Clark into the WNBA, including arguments about fandom, media narratives, and the broader social tensions surrounding her popularity. These are highly contested interpretations. The supplied material does not independently establish every claim made by the commentators, nor does it provide a complete account of the wider disputes being discussed. But it does show how quickly the three-point contest controversy becomes connected to a much larger argument about who gets blamed, who gets defended, and who is expected to answer for the behavior of an entire audience. And that is what makes Clark's influence so complicated. Her visibility brings attention to the league. That attention creates new opportunities, new scrutiny, and new arguments. The same audience that increases interest in the sport can also become part of debates that have little to do with a single game or a single contest. So the question is no longer simply whether Clark should have accepted the invitation. It becomes whether the league and the media can discuss Caitlin Clark as an individual player without turning every surrounding controversy into a referendum on her, her fans, or the future of the entire WNBA. Because the more attention she attracts, the more every decision involving her becomes a larger public argument. And that leads to the final question: if one player can create this much attention simply by choosing not to participate, how much power does a modern superstar actually have over the league built around her? And that brings the controversy to its biggest question. What happens the next time a major star decides that participating in a league event is simply not worth it? Caitlin Clark's decision does not, by itself, prove that the balance of power in the WNBA has permanently changed. The supplied transcript does not establish that the league suffered a specific financial loss, that the event failed without her, or that Clark intended to create a broader institutional shift. But the decision does expose a question that sports leagues cannot easily avoid. How much control does a league really have over the value of an event when its biggest stars can choose whether to participate? For decades, league-created showcases have depended on the cooperation of the players who give those events their identity. The league can organize the contest, promote the broadcast, and announce the participants. But the audience still decides what it cares about. And in the case of Clark, her absence became a story of its own. That is the power of modern sports attention. A player does not always need to appear on the court to influence the conversation. Sometimes the decision not to participate creates the bigger question, the bigger debate, and the larger audience discussion. The future implication is not necessarily that one player controls an entire league. That would go beyond what the supplied material proves. The real question is more complicated. Can leagues continue to assume that their most recognizable stars will automatically participate in every showcase? Or will players increasingly decide which events deserve their time, their image, and their participation? If that happens, the value of a league event may depend on more than the league's promotional strategy. It may depend on whether the players themselves believe the event is worth showing up for. And that is why this controversy reaches beyond one three-point contest. The question is no longer just why Caitlin Clark declined. It is what her absence made everyone else start asking.